You're listening to World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world. And here are your hosts, Angel Rose and Ahanu.
Ready for firing circuit. Of dusting each other off, the lowly broom becomes an item of military significance. Next, Geiger counters are used to check the troops for signs of radioactivity.
You are very welcome back again. We're here with Charles Scammahorn.
There you go.
Let me start that again. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I've said that, countless times in the
I got it right.
I got it right every time. Yeah. You're very welcome back. My name is Ahanu, and with me is Angel Rose, and we're with Charles Scammahorn. And this is episode number 3 because we're engaged in a fabulous discussion about the atomic bomb and Charles Scammahorn's role in all of that. As you were growing up. Now, the last
he didn't really have a direct role in it. We don't want people to think he created it or anything.
Well, this is what I'm going to say. His experiences in the Air Force is what we've talked about in the last session, and how you aced all those tests and so on, and you were telling us the stories of how that jeopardized other of your comrades, your partners, their abilities to excel and so on. We talked about the atom bomb, how that first one that was dropped on Hiroshima and of course Nagasaki, how they were in the 10 kiloton range and you were asked to carry a bomb in the 10 megaton range. Well, it was certainly
it was available, but the ones that were given to us were more like 1 megaton.
Okay, yeah, but they were still like 100 times...
100 times bigger. Not 1,000 times bigger.
100 times. When I think of mega, of course, I always think of 1,000. Yeah. So, and you had refused to actually carry that bomb. You told us the story about all of that in the last
I didn't quite refuse. I said I didn't want to, and I emphasized it strongly. Because to say I refused would have been kind of against the law, I think. Okay. I didn't say that.
All right, but
I made it clear.
You didn't carry it, yes.
That's right.
And we closed up that last segment where we were talking about Oppenheimer and how as a man, in a sense, he may have regretted the destruction that the bomb caused.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
And you had said that it was a bad idea and all atomic bombs are a bad idea. So with that, we left it so that in this section today we were going to talk about humanity in general. We wanted to ask you about, when you say atomic energy or atomic bombs are a bad idea, are there alternatives? What is humanity moving towards? What is the best solution out of all of this? So do you think we can go there? And then towards the end of the session, we want to talk about perhaps a little bit about the future.
Yikes.
Yeah.
I've actually thought quite a bit about that,
Okay.
and you probably are not going to like it.
Well, that's okay. So let's talk about
Yeah.
the present day now, because in the other sessions we've talked about the past, your early days and your early experiences and so on. So bring us right up to the present now. And here we are in the atomic age, and you're saying it's a bad idea. Why do you say that?
Well, let's just sorry, Charles, just for a minute.
Go ahead.
Can we just say for our listeners, what is the amount of years between when you were involved in all of that and now?
I got out in 1960.
Okay.
So what is that? 57?
Now we're 2016.
66 years.
Is it that long?
No,
No,
16 plus
years.
40.
46
50.
years.
56 years.
56 years.
Yeah,
56
None of
years.
us can add.
Go back to school.
I did. Yeah.
56 years.
56,
Okay,
yeah.
and now here we are.
And now here we are. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
And perhaps it's one of the greatest miracles of humanity that none of those bombs were ever used. Because think about the fact that about 10 different countries have access to them now. And any given country probably has at least a half a dozen people who at one time or another were hovering their finger over the bomb, over the
Button.
big red button. They may have had different colored buttons in those other countries.
Right.
But all the same,
Yeah.
there was always a problem if one of them went off in anger instead of just a peaceful test. You never know where it's going to end. And I know when I was in the Air Force and Curtis LeMay was the head of the Air Force, the policy essentially was everybody goes with everything they got.
Yeah.
And we had hundreds of aircraft ready to go when the Cuba Missile Crisis happened, and a lot of my buddies were there sitting in those airplanes.
What do you think is the logic of that when somebody says everybody goes? Because I mean, once that exchange happens and several of those bombs go off, I mean, there's nobody left.
The people would be left down in New Zealand for a while.
Yeah.
Until
Or maybe in underground bunkers, perhaps for a
For a
short
while, yeah. In fact, I'm very enthusiastic about that. I got a thing called the Earth-Ark Project, which it saves all the seeds of the world, but a second project called the Life Haven Project, where I wanted to get a retiring cruise ship that has maybe 5,000 people on it, a holiday ship, and take it down to an island south of New Zealand and dock it there, where it would be more or less safe from at least the immediate effects. And I wanted to have 100 people living there. They would rotate through randomly selected families in all humanity. And it would be a core human population that could restore the earth after everybody else got killed.
Like a Noah's Ark.
It was a Noah's Ark for people.
Yeah.
The Earth-Ark is kind of like a Noah's Ark put high in Antarctica, where it's 14,000 feet above sea level on ice.
Right.
Temperature averages around minus 55. Consequently, you could put storage there, and by covering it up and some other insulation things, you could make seeds last for tens of thousands of years, probably. And the thing that's wrong with the Svalbard seed bank, mostly commercial stuff, is that it's limited and it's within a few hundred yards of open ocean, which is open ocean temperature. And the temperature at the Svalbard, even though it's very far north, 80 degrees north, the temperature there rises above freezing for a couple of months a year. Consequently, they actually have refrigerators on the Svalbard to keep it cool. The place I want to put my seed bank, it's minus 55 and rarely goes above zero.
So that is a little look into the future. So
Yeah.
do you see, by planning that or by even entertaining the idea of it, do you foresee these bombs going off? Do you foresee that cataclysm?
Well, let's put it this way. Over the course of, say, 10,000 years, civilization's been around for 10,000 years, what do you think the chances of at any given year, probably 100 people have their finger potentially could go on the button. So you take 10,000 years, you multiply that by 100 people. What's that, 10,000?
So statistically, you're saying it's more likely to happen than not.
I would say it's beyond, all the way up to inevitable, yeah.
Really, that
Oh,
much?
absolutely. When I was in the Air Force and kind of doing my mental calculations, it went kind of like this, you know. Well, what's the chance of one of these bombs going off this year? I mean, a war going. I thought, well, 1959 and 1960, it was maybe 5%. Turned out that was a little optimistic because at the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was 50-50.
Right.
Right. So 5% was kind of optimistic. Well, I was this was my thoughts before that. And I was saying, well, that 5% pure, well, that's not too bad on a yearly basis. But you go 5 years and then another year and another year and another 5%, another. Out to 20 years, which would be the length of my career, that kind of multiplication, which isn't exactly accurate, but it gets up to 100%.
Yeah.
Or near it anyway.
So
And I said, I don't want to have anything to do with that because functionally that would mean if I was a successful combat pilot, would kill maybe 1 million people.
Yeah.
Almost every single one of which would be innocent of all wrongdoing.
Yes. Yeah. And you did not want any part in
I
it.
didn't want any part of it.
Yeah.
It's stupid. They called it mad. It was beyond mad.
Yes.
It was absolutely insane.
We do completely agree with that, and we support
Well,
you in that.
everybody does.
But here's the question, though. In terms of looking at things as they are today, and I know you have this desire for the food bank and the people bank and so on into the future, but right now, you're saying that it really behooves everybody to start making preparations because the inevitability of this is beyond question.
I don't think there's much that individuals can do. We have to do it as a society.
So is there any room at all for the new agers thinking positive and trying to raise the frequency and, you know, raise consciousness? And is there any purpose in that at all, do you think? Or is it doing any good?
Well, it certainly makes us all feel good, or at least better.
Right.
Yeah. I tend to be a little bit of a bit doom. Yeah, you got the right one. Okay. Or do you?
He does.
Who has the right tea?
He's got the right to.
We have tea here, individual teas. I think this is mine. It's
Good.
I
Cheers.
usually drink out of that one. That's
Oh,
why.
you do? This is
But it was freshly washed, so it's
pink
nice and
cup
clean.
with flowers on it. Now let's hope they would continue to be, because this is a very
Well.
serious
Well,
discussion.
it's serious, but you got to be cheerful about it because if you kind of start getting morbid about it, it just feels hopeless. Because when it comes down to it, the universe is really, really, really big. 10 to the 22nd stars. If only 1 in a million of them has life on it, 1 in a million, that's a big number. There's still billions of other stars.
Well, let's go completely off the charts now
Okay.
with this question, okay?
Go there.
And up to now, we've remained very practical. We've remained very grounded in the Air Force military war exercises, the whole purpose of the bomb, all that kind of thing, the statistics, the figures, the facts. Of late, people have said, and you can see various videos on YouTube and so on, about a possible interference from extraterrestrials that was caused by the atomic bomb ripping a hole in the atmosphere. And that attracted their attention and allowed them to come in, and hence you had the Roswell crash in 1947 after the war, and many what do they call them, where the ETs would take people for experimentation, what do you call them, abductions and so on. So these people are also saying that they have actually prevented the explosion or the release of many of these bombs.
Well,
Do you
the
think-
ETs supposedly intercept
Intercept-
test missiles.
Yeah.
and debunk them in midair, supposedly.
Do you think there's any truth to that?
No.
No. You don't give it any credence whatsoever.
Minuscule. I'll give it some, but small, very
Right,
small.
right.
And the reason is that the universe is so big, and the chance of likelihood in our galaxy, even the Milky Way galaxy, which is 100,000, it's big. Anyway, by the Drake calculation, there's probably only one possible civilization going at a time. Something like that. It's rare.
Okay.
And they would be very, very far away in just time and distance. So even if they did see an atomic bomb going off, which attracted their attention, and they carefully pointed a telescope at us and saw television or something, and they hit, but even that would be like 1,000 years from now, 10,000 years from now, 100,000 years. And that's even only within our own galaxy.
So you believe that we're the only sentient life in this galaxy then?
No.
Aside from one in a million.
We're the only sentient life that would be here within, let's say, 10,000 years. Even if they really knew how to do it.
Right.
Because things are just a long ways away.
Yeah. So you don't give any credence to the people who claim to have been abducted or have claimed to have seen extraterrestrial ET ships?
Well, I listen to them. I cooperate with them. One of our mutual acquaintances has a Martian spaceship in his backyard, and I listen to him talk about it, and he tells me about his conversations with those Martians, and he loaned me one of his Martians.
He did?
Yes, he did, and I took him to Sam Umsicle, my personal garden gnome, who resides a few blocks from my house. And when Debbie and I are on our daily walks, we walk past him and have brief conversations with him. Almost always they're about my blog, and I ask him if he approves of this blog, if I'm going the right direction, or I'm doing something wrong. And his expression is interesting to watch, because sometimes it's like, and other times it's like, and yet other times it's like, anyway, it's always up to me to look at his face, which is made out of plaster Paris or concrete or something, but to look at his face and discern what the process of the universe is going on here. And the way I look at it, I'm looking at a piece of concrete, and I accept it as that.
Yeah.
But what I feel I'm looking at is my own inner response to what I'm thinking about it at the moment.
Okay.
It's kind of looking at a deeper me.
So do you think that's the same, though, for everybody's experience who has had these encounters with ETs? You think that's just going on in their own head?
Well, I don't know what's going on in their head, but I know to some degree what's going on in my head. So I take this Martian with me over to Sam Umsicle, and I introduce him. And he's kind of like Rumpelstiltskin. He's kind of a cranky, I think he's probably an Irish, but he's a very cranky one.
He hasn't left
He's
any
Irish.
gold over there. He needs to go back
He's
and
Irish,
make
how
some
do you
gold.
hear that?
Yeah, probably. He just made anyway, he seems to have that kind of cranky Irish tradition going, of which my father's mother was one, and I knew her quite well, and she was a garden gnome.
Red hair.
Yeah, anyway, so I have friendly conversations with Sam Umsicle, and but he did not like me bringing around a Martian. He made it very clear. So when I took that back to my friend who loaned him to me, he seemed to be a little bit upset about it.
So is the Martian made of concrete as well?
I never actually saw him. I was more like I accepted the presence of him being with me. And I took that presence over to Sam Umsicle, and we looked at each other. He looked back.
This is quite a extreme conversation. When we started out talking about the bomb and the future of humanity, and we're talking about Martians.
But
and gnomes.
I hope you felt the subtlety in my response to that. because I'm exceedingly realistic, trying to be realistic, worldly in my relationship to the bomb and my thoughts about it.
Sure.
But also, I'm willing to accept the fact that a person who's functioning in this reality pretty well has a Martian in his backyard that he talks to. Okay, I'm willing to listen to him talk about that and to play his game for a while, but I'm not going to base any real world decisions on that.
Now, what about when you have commanders, Air Force commanders who will actually say openly that their mission was thwarted by some extraterrestrial beings?
They do say that.
And
Yeah.
Well,
some people do say that.
I knew quite a few of these guys, and I liked them. They were all decent, sane people, except that I encountered some of them that were clearly not sane at all.
Right.
One guy, when he found I was departing the Air Force, held a machete up to my face.
Yes, you
within-
told us that story. Yeah.
I told you that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I still have hope for humanity's consciousness, actually.
Well, I do too.
You know, to kind of go in a different direction than the standard linear way we've gone in the past. I still have hope that somehow there'll be a what do you call it, what's the point you come to, Hannah, when the scales tip?
Yeah.
You know what
a
I'm
tipping
saying?
point.
Yeah, where we kind of wake up enough, where there's enough of us that do not want that sort of future.
Yeah. But when you said earlier on, Charles, about it's up to us, it's up to humanity, is there a different agenda that's pushing the bomb agenda? That attitude of aggression and power and control. How do the rest of humanity fix that? How do we resolve it?
And I'm optimistic in some ways that we will work it out. And here's my reasoning. I've gone through this before, but it's like between 1900 and 2000, 200 million people were killed in various kinds of international combat. 200 million. That's 2 million a year. Since 2000 up till now, we haven't killed 1 million people in that kind of combat situation. And so and the population is 3 times bigger than it was in the middle of the century. So we're 100 times better about not killing people. And then people say, yeah, well, that's just war. What about other things? And I say, how about disease? Back when I was young, in say 1940, people in my family, my personal family, mother, father, grandparents, had smallpox, scarlet fever, whooping cough, diphtheria, cholera,
Right.
and probably a bunch of other things I don't even remember. Diseases that are totally, or at least around here, non-existent. Now, they may bounce back if things happen, but at least at the moment, things are really great. And then somebody says, well, that's just 2 things. How about this one? Food. Back in George Washington's time, it got better right along, about 95%, let's say 90%, just to round it out, 90% of people were farmers. Why were they farmers? Because it took that much human effort to create the food for the population to live. Now it's something like 3%.
Right, tiny.
Tiny percent compared. We can create our food. So we have all these other things. So it's not 100 times better, but it's a lot better. Okay, well, that's just 3 things. Well, how about entertainment? Back when I was a kid, entertainment consisted of playing cards, conversation. A couple of people could play the piano sometimes if somebody had a piano. Singing. We used to do things like that was entertainment. Now people sit for 8 hours a day watching the tube, or hopefully working on their computer because there's more personal input in that, and so it's more meaningful. But well, it kind of goes on and on like that. Things are so much better now in so many different ways. that there's a real hope that maybe we can find answers to these other issues. Maybe we can. At the moment, probably the reason we haven't been having major wars between major people, like Russia or China or us or others, is because everybody realizes, we bomb them, we cease to exist. So all of the political aspirations that I have for my particular group that I'm representing are just totally wiped out. And I don't want to do that. Like in the olden days, 100 years ago, if you have a war, even if you have a war between France and Germany, who supposedly don't like each other very much, after the war, they're still there. They maybe changed the border a little bit this way and that, but most of the people that survived are still there and are tolerated. But if you get into a war with hydrogen bombs, everything is gone. Everything.
You mentioned about the growth of the likes of food production and attitudes around health and those kinds of things. Would you call that, would you label that a growth of the awareness of humanity? And is that the kind of growth that could lead to the eventual destruction of these nuclear weapons?
Well, Obama just today said he wanted to get rid of them.
He did?
Yeah. He was over in Japan, actually hugging some survivors of the Hiroshima bomb.
Wow. Gee.
And of course, some people in this country call him the Great Wimp, because he's so thoughtful. Yeah. But during his administration, we haven't killed millions of people. In fact, when they make a mistake occasionally and bomb that hospital, remember a couple months ago, killed 40 people, which was super sad. But 40 individuals compared to, what would it be, 30 million that could have been killed during his administration? It's just minuscule. We're like 1,000,000 times better from that point of view.
So from what I'm hearing from you, and tell me, Angie Rose, if you feel it too, that you're more optimistic then about the future than what you pretend, because we started off
What
where
do
you
you
were...
pretend? You ask long run, 10,000 years, the way things are now.
No, yeah.
That's
But
terrible.
what I mean is that we were looking statistically at the possibility of one or more of these bombs going off, and it looked as if it was inevitable earlier in the conversation. But from the way you're talking, it sounds like humanity is actually growing in awareness. The consciousness somehow is rising. And that's, of course, represented in our leaders. So if you're saying that Obama said today that he wants to get rid of atomic weapons,
yeah.
then, I mean, that is a growth of awareness, in my opinion. I mean, that has to be raising of some kind of frequency somewhere.
Well, even Ronald Reagan tried really hard to get rid of the weapons. He was the guy that got the salt stuff going.
Wasn't he going for the Star Wars idea?
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
But what is Star Wars? Star Wars was an effort to remove atomic weaponry from the world by being able to shoot down the missiles coming at us. And if you could really successfully do that, and what would you say, more economically, then you could send the missiles over. If you could shoot them down, that would put an end to that kind of warfare. That was his goal.
I see.
Yeah.
So all in all then, things are looking brighter.
Well, that's why I said those 4 things.
Yes.
And maybe on the issues of just warfare in general, things are might get just perfectly better.
Yeah.
On the other hand, then you kind of step into, well, where are we really going right now?
Yes.
Okay, there's 2 major things going on right now that the public is slightly aware of, but maybe not. One is called CRISPR. It's the ability to insert genetic code right into the middle of DNA and thus literally create anything whatsoever that life is capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And we've got hundreds, maybe thousands of people working hard at doing that right now. And in the short run, I think it's let's say in the 10 to 50 year run, it's going to create a lot more food out on the surface of the planet where we can cultivate food. And so we'll have more food. So the population will probably be able to keep growing at its rate, which is doubling every 40 years or so, for another 40 years, be able to do that.
Now you're talking about genetically modifying food. Is that what you're talking about?
Everything, not
genetically
just food.
modified humans as well.
Absolutely, it's
Right.
already being.
And you're in agreement with that. You think that's beneficial?
I'm not saying I'm in agreement. I'm just saying that's the way it's going to go. If our technology continues, that's simply the way it's going to go.
And do you think that is beneficial to humanity?
In the short run, yeah, because we'll have more food, so we can keep growing for another 40 years or more, maybe. So that's good.
Yeah.
Now, see, in the end, what I value is let's just say human happiness. I want to maximize human happiness. Now, you come back, let's say, 1 billion years from now, and even the Earth is gone. And so you'd have to say, well, humanity's gone. But there was a certain number of humans that actually lived and prospered. And what I would like to say is we maximize the amount of human happiness before humans were functionally just gone. Now, what does that mean? Well, for one thing, it means you have to have human beings to live. And secondly, you have to allow them to do their own thinking for their own selves, because that's where their happiness is.
Right.
So it kind of comes back to, well, I want to maximize the total number of human beings that will ever live, but from the long distance point of view. But what that means is not to maximize the number of people right now, because if we maximize the number of people right now, we just eat up all the resources and we have a population collapse. Yeah. And that would not maximize the total number of people and the total amount of happiness. So you don't want to just breed maximally, which is the way Mother Nature does it. Just breed as much as you can and let the cards fall where they do. And that's okay up until you have humans with atomic bombs and CRISPR. Because
I don't like that name. Doesn't it sound terrible?
Yeah.
CRISPR.
Well, it's
you get an image of somebody being toasted in a microwave oven.
it's CRISPR without the E, and it's a way of manipulating genes. But that's only one of the two things that are really exciting and scary. And the other one,
yeah, it's scary in terms of what they can do with that.
we don't know, because I'm sure they will get very creative.
I'm sure they will. That
Yeah,
that does scare me.
it does.
Because their
Okay.
creativity in the past hasn't always been so benevolent.
Well, it seems like an awful lot of things go right straight to war and then work their way out. Like, that's how airplanes became as big and powerful as they are, was actually a lot of weaponry design between before World War One, between the World War One and Two, after World War One. Most of that aviation development was for military, and then it applied to civilian stuff.
Well,
And now we got lots of stuff.
I have a question before we go on to the second thing you're going to tell us. And that is, what is your opinion of the human being genetically as it is right now? And if you knew that you could insert something in the center of the cell, what would you do? I
really like humanity the way it is.
I do too.
However, there's one other thing, and this wasn't where I was going with this, but I want to double back. The biggest thing that's happened to humanity in the last 50 years is SAT, the Scholastic Aptitude Test. And what that has done is selected all the smartest kids, at least here in the United States, and sent them off to the higher education schools like Harvard or Cal or Stanford or places like that, where they meet mates who they tend to marry, and then they marry, and then they send their kids. Anyway, because they're smart, well-educated, functioning, have contacts with all the right people, that kind of thing, they have children that are genetically better than they were because they met the very best. We're now in about the third generation of that because we've been doing it for so long. The kids that are on the third cycle of this have an average IQ, I'm told, I don't know if this is true, but it seems reasonable, of 120. Now, it used to be like one kid in 20 would have an IQ of 120. Now, it's average for the kids that are on the third cycle of this. Mm-hmm. The Harvard graduates marrying kids who are the kids of Harvard graduates.
And are they making good decisions for the population in general?
Well, you know how this always works out. Even with the kings and queens of the ancient past, they married each other. They kept the money and the wealth with them. But because they didn't have the SAT selecting them and cleaning up their genetic code, they tended to get pretty ratty after a while because of all the inbreeding, and it got bad. That's the exact opposite of what happens with the SAT, because you tend to clean up everybody's genetic code with that. And then with the CRISPR that's coming along, it'll go even faster.
But it's not a given, though, Charles.
Well,
that everybody born in that type of environment is going to choose somebody of like kind. I mean, you could have somebody's son or daughter that is an offspring of those people say, well, you know, I just met this girl over the United States and she's just on the wrong side of the tracks, but I'm in love with her and I'm going to marry her. Yeah. So it's not a given that it's going to be pure the whole way through.
Of course not. But
which is the way it's actually been.
It's the way it has been, except with the group of people I'm talking about. The ones that were sent to the very best institutions. They're marrying people who were, you know, here they are, they're 18 to 25. That's when they find their mates.
Right.
So they tend to marry each other. And it's that group of people.
But there's lots of advanced kids being born today that are not in that group. A lot of advanced kids are popping up.
Of course there are.
And they're remembering remembering other lifetimes. They're remembering, you know, proving that they remember, okay, and all sorts of stuff. And I think that's the result of what's happening on the planet in general right now. I think we're naturally giving birth to kids that are more turned on in their DNA than us, let's just say, okay? Their seem to have more switches on than we had when we were young.
Oh, that's true.
I look at my granddaughter, for example, and you know, just what they do, well, just the way their minds work. I mean, I thought, geez, I had nowhere near that kind of creativity when I was young. I didn't think like that. She solves problems on her own.
Yep.
You know, she invents things. And I think she's only one of many, many that are, coming in like this.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Incredible athletic abilities, artistic abilities.
I agree 100%.
So there is an evolution happening, I think, somewhere.
But the evolution with this fairly rarefied group, maybe as few as 10,000 people are in this group that I'm talking about. Mm. It isn't a really large group, but they are being so selected that they are becoming superior beings to what we've done.
Yeah, but are they emotionally intelligent is what I want to know. Or are they just intellectually smart?
If they get to go to, one of those superior schools,
I know, are they teaching those sorts of things? Okay.
As a matter of fact, yes.
They are? Okay,
good. And this is one of the things that I find most exciting. It's called the Harvard Grant Study, named for a guy named Grant. They followed the class of 1939 through 1942. They got a couple of hundred kids from that group. They called it the Normal Boy Study. Yeah, as if Harvard boys are normal boys. Anyway, they followed them all the way through their lives. Most of them have now died. And they gave them extensive verbal interviews with them and the people that knew them as children. Mm-hmm. And then every few years, all the way up till the present, they go in and they interview them again, and now they can look back and see, well, what were the traits that worked out for the best and which didn't work out so well. Well, one of the shocking...
Then they're going to crisp them, aren't they? If they're
well,
if they have traits that they don't like, let's just crisp them.
That's kind of that's a whole different issue, because this whole thing started in 1939.
Yeah, I got it.
But anyway,
okay. I'm just kind of
what they have discovered was in a way, absolutely obvious, and yet it's still almost unknown. And that is that those kids that started drinking, let's say everybody at Harvard probably drank at parties and things, but those that drank to suppress pain ended up in the gutter. Even if they started off super rich, super smart, super everything going for them, if they drank to cover their pain, it didn't cover enough pain, they drink more, start smoking, drink more, and end up in the gutter and dying early, all the rest of it. Whereas the kids that went to party, had a few drinks, drank for pleasure, drank for social interaction, and as soon as it wasn't fun, they quit drinking. Okay? Those people, because they had the superior education, the superior contacts, money, blah, 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 they turned out great. But the kids that drank to suppress pain. Now, so I've been trying to promote this thing, even here in Bend a little bit, drink for pleasure, not for pain. That's my slogan.
Right, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
So there is an emotional maturity with that Angel Rose was raising there a short while ago. Let us remind our listeners and our viewers that we are speaking with Charles Scamahorn.
Yeah.
And we have come a long way in our discussion because we started off in the 1940s, the Second World War, talking about the bomb, the development of technology, the human genome project in terms of the manipulation of human DNA, genetically modified foods. We've covered a vast period of time as well as a vast range of subjects. And we do want to take a quick little break here. We do want to come back after this. And when we come back, we want to talk to you about a pet project that we know you have. And that is about the various stages of human development. We want to talk
Can we talk first? He had another thing he was going to tell us about first.
A what?
Didn't you have 2 developments you were going to tell
Yeah.
us? We only talked about CRISPR.
Well, let's take a quick break. And as soon as we
Then
come
we'll be
back, you can start with that one. We'll be right back after this.
You have been listening to Angel Rose and Ahanu on World of Empowerment Radio, your station for practical spirituality in a changing world.